The heart of this story is not so much you being delivered from the difficulties that you are going through, though you may need that, and Jesus is a deliverer for the storms that you are in the middle of. This is a story about adopting and following Jesus and taking his pace through life. Well, you got a big job, you got a lot of people that report to you. Great, you're a disciple of Jesus. We have to take on Jesus' pace. To take on Jesus' pace. Now, you could hear this story and you could have a surface reading of this text and you could say, oh, that is a nice little Sunday school lesson. Hey, everybody, stop worrying, let go and let God. God's got you, bruh. You could do that. You could do that thing. And we do that, don't we? We don't want to wrestle with all the things that are going on inside of us, and we're afraid and we're anxious. And so it's easier just to be like, hey, let go and let God. Don't worry about it. Have faith. Or you might say, the lesson, the service reading, the nice little Sunday school lesson is, hey, you got some storms, like you're traveling somewhere. Jesus is asleep. What you got to do is wake him up, and he will cast out and rebuke the demon storm. The problem with those kinds of readings is they shift the focus from where we've accessed peace back to you and me. And they assume that the point of faith and having faith in Jesus is only my own deliverance from my difficulties. Are you tracking? Like that's it. Like the whole thing about faith and following Jesus is so I don't have difficulties and God delivers me from my storm. But that's what I'm trying to get at. It's actually a window into how Jesus operates and an invitation to enter into his way of life. Remember how we take what's inside of us often and we will project it out like on a screen, like here's the problem. Jesus does the same thing and he projects out from who he is. That's where the peace is coming from. I want you to know it's a little almost throwaway phrase in verse 36 that when they put Jesus in the boat, like took him along, it almost seems like, why would you put that in there? Just as he was. Now, if you had a paper Bible, what I would want you to do is I would want you to circle the word just as he was, and then I'd want you to go down to the word sleeping, and I want you to circle that, and I'd want you to draw a line between the two. I mean, if you don't have a paper Bible, I commend a paper Bible to you. I know we put the message on YouVersion. I use YouVersion. It's wonderful. But man, I tell you, this is my mom's paper Bible. This is maybe my most precious possession. You mark up a paper Bible and give it to your kids. You give them your journey of faith. It's beautiful. I look at it all the time. But I would want you to circle because those two things are tied. Just as he was, and he was sleeping in the boat. Here's the question. What kind of person was Jesus? Here's what I mean. What kind of atmosphere did he project? You know how you're around some people and they just give off an anxious kind of, you're around them and you're like, ooh, I feel more anxious when I'm around that person. Or I feel more depressed when I'm around that person. Or, someone, they just project this air of like, I'm in charge and I have everything, or they're sad. Here's how Dallas Willard described Jesus. He said, the kind of person Jesus was, the atmosphere that he projected, he said, Jesus was relaxed. In other words, his life was characterized by quiet and still. So here's Jesus sleeping during the storm, and the disciples think this is a dereliction of Jesus' duty. Come on, teacher, wake up. And actually, what Mark is telling us is that this is actually an invitation. It's why you don't want to waste your storm, because it's a doorway into a different way. If you always insist on faith is about my deliverance from my difficulty, you never get to a better path. You never start doing anything different because you just want to be rescued out of every moment that you're in. The next story is Jesus goes and heals the demoniac, and he's delivered. And the text says, and he's in his right mind. That's important. Like he was rescued from a storm that he couldn't end. You and I need that. But what now? You need a better path. You are delivered out, just whatever storm you're going through right now, you're delivered out of that current storm. What now? Well, I won't tell you what now. The what now is Jesus' path and his pace. Jesus' path and his pace. Here's the path. John says, it tells us in John 14, Jesus says, peace I leave with you. My peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled and don't be afraid. How does the world give peace? How does it come about? Because Jesus says, I give peace and I don't give it like the world gives. Well, the way you get peace in the world is you earn it. It's earned. Jesus says that it's received. So in other words, it's a gift of grace. Now, grace confounds anybody who performs. Because anybody who in the room who performs, you know that you get a sense of self and you get rewards from your performance. That's not bad. You take your gifts, your skills, you use them, you're rewarded, you're compensated. Here's the problem. It's that we think our identity comes from our performance. And so our whole life becomes about earning. It's why anybody who's a high performer often wrestles with grace, because they think if I receive it, then I must not be worth anything because I didn't earn it. That's how the world gives. And Jesus says, I don't give peace the way that the world gives. My peace I simply give to you, and you have to receive it. Here's the title of the message today, and I'm going to explain the story where this comes from, but this is what you and I need. We need a different pace. Here's the pace I want to commend to you. I want to commend to you the pace, and this is Jesus' pace, the speed of peace. The speed of peace. You may think that's unrealistic. You're like, you don't know what I do. You don't know the demands on me. I don't. You don't know all the things that come at me and that I'm responsible for. It is unrealistic to think that I could go through life at the speed of peace. Come on. And then you also think, well, that means I've got to slow down. No, Jesus did a lot of things. He just had something on the inside. He had a path and a pace that he projected out onto the world that he invites you and me into, and it's the speed of peace. I was at a gathering a number of years ago with a bunch of pastors. And we pastors, we're kind of weird. Weird job. And we're just kind of weird people. And I understand the world of being a pastor. I've done it for a minute now. And I was asked to do a little talk on just some kind of leadership thing. And I talked about this. I talked about the speed of peace. And I talked about the fact that we're invited to live at a different pace and to model that for our people. That Jesus lived at the speed of peace. And I could tell as I was just describing this, that the people in the room were like, wait a second. They're having the reaction you may have been having, like, that's just not realistic. These are pastors, by the way. So I'm done. I do my little 15 minutes of talking about this. And, each of the little sessions, we'd open up for questions. And a guy looks over at me and he goes, okay, so tell me how big is these are all Nazarene pastors. How big is your church? And I told you the size was big. And I should have not told a number. I should have just said, it's enough. But I didn't. I said a number. And he said, oh, well, you've earned the right to have peace. We haven't. These are the religious leaders, by the way, saying, oh, you can't have the speed of peace. You can't have that in your life. I'm just telling you that the heart of this story is not so much you being delivered from the difficulties that you are going through, though you may need that, and Jesus is a deliverer for the storms that you are in the middle of. This is a story about adopting and following Jesus and taking his pace through life. Well, you got a big job. You got a lot of people that report to you. Great. You're a disciple of Jesus. You got to figure out how to be a leader in that context and be a follower of Jesus in that context and bring the speed of peace to that context. That's your job, because you're a follower of Jesus. That's you. That's your job. But I know in the heart that we want this. There is a speed of peace that I could take on in my general outlook of life. Like if you're a college student, you could adopt right now. I'm going to take from Jesus his pace, and I'm going to keep up with Jesus for the rest of my life. I promise you, you will begin to access a pace that is sustainable for the rest of your life. We talk all the time about burnout and about trauma and about the difficult. The reason we have that is because we don't have the speed of peace. That's why that's happening in our culture, because people don't know how to access peace. They don't know a different pace. I'm telling you, Jesus is the master. He's the Prince of Peace. Whatever the prince is, you get what he has, and he has peace. Do you want that?